Okay, so this next video is going to go into layers, blocks, external reference files, that type of thing, so that you can turn layers off, you can look at blocks and see whether you want to explode them, so that you can edit the contents of those blocks and generally clean the drawing up before you start to work on it. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our Layer Properties Manager dialog box. Click on that. You can see that there's an absolute load of layers on here. Some of them have got an X prefix. Now normally that denotes that they were once an external reference layer, and so therefore part of the big file. Perhaps the topo or something like that was originally drawn separately and has now been merged into the drawing. So it's effectively now a block within the drawing, and it might be underneath some of our red and blue layers and that sort of thing. So we want to probably tidy up the drawing a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into our yellow circle again and see that I want to work on plot 68 because that's the next one that we're going to draw up and get center lines for and that sort of thing. So what I want to do first is probably actually select, looks like everything's on a block at the moment, which is the basic sort of site plan. I'm going to select that and see that that current layer is showing as TSP XREF site. So what I'm going to do is go into my layers and find that layer, and it's TSP XREF site, and I'm going to lock that layer, which means that what you'll see when we come out of our layer dialog box, when we come off it, it's gone a slightly darker grey, and when we hover over, you'll see that it comes up with a little padlock, which shows that it's on a locked layer. So for example, our yellow circle doesn't come up with a padlock, so it's on a sort of a current layer that isn't locked, and our blue and our red lines aren't locked either, but they are actually showing me that when you just hover over a certain part of those blue or red lines, it shows that it's one great big block. Now we can potentially tidy the drawing up a bit more by actually freezing that layer, and we know that that layer is showing as TSP XREF drainage, so we can go into our layer properties dialog box and we can go on to here, and we actually see that that's actually the current layer. So we don't want to freeze or turn off our current layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on layer 0, right click on layer 0 and say set current, and then you can see you've got a green tick by that, which means that we know that that's now the current layer. And what I'm going to also do on here is I'm going to turn off, actually what I'll do is I'll freeze and turn off the layer so that I know that we've manipulated that layer. And you can see that when you do so, the actual layer disappears from the drawing in the background. Now, sometimes if you just turn the layer off, it doesn't actually do anything because the actual layer needs to be frozen rather than just turned off, because it's been drawn on a few different layers, and when it's brought in as a block, it will still show those layers even if it's a block. So you have to freeze the main layer, which is what this one's on, to actually turn the layers off so you can't see them. So now when we zoom in, when we're in our or near our block 68, our house number plot 68, it's a lot easier to see what's going on with it because we've frozen layers and we've locked our main layer as well. So you can see that when I hover over again, that this layer is a locked layer. Now also with our drainage drawing, say for instance you actually wanted to separate out the layers because they're all one layer at the moment, you can actually select that, any part of this layer, and you can go to modify and you can explode that block, and then when you select a part of that, you see that it's all broken up into separate parts now. So you can edit that, or you can perhaps interrogate that layer to find out, okay, so that specific layer is layer X, drainage, SOS, TSP, FW private. So now you can see that whole lot of drainage information is all on separate layers that you can then freeze and thaw if you want to. For now though, I'm just going to actually undo, go back so that until these all these different parts become unexploded again. So I'm going to type U on the keyboard, go down to undo, and it says enter number of operations to undo. I'm just going to return to have one operation undone and see if that's enough. Yeah, so I've just undone one operation, which was the explode command, and that takes me back so that whole drawing, or this whole sort of block is back as one object again, and then I can then freeze and turn off the layer. Now the reason I'm turning the layer off and freezing it is because then I know that I've made a change to it. If I turn it off, I don't think there's many other layers that have been turned off, so it's just a visual clue for me to say, okay, I've done that myself, because then I can turn it on later in the drawing if I need it back again.